Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo is expected to address the opening ceremony of the fourth session of the 5th Pan-African Parliament in Midrand today. The fourth session is a week-long program which will see African parliamentarians engage under the African Union 2021 theme, the Year of Arts, Culture and Heritage. For more on this, let's now bring in foreign editor Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, you are at the Pan-African Parliament. Is there much activity there today?
Yes, indeed. As you can see inside, I think when you look at the visuals inside the hall, members of the African Parliament have already converged. They will be sworn in, the new members, with the aim of adopting an agenda for this session. As you have indicated, in line with the African Union theme this year, the focus will be on arts and culture as a means to ensure that you unite, but you also develop the continent, but also generally to build the economy on the continent. Now, we know that the president of Ghana, President Nana Akufo-Addo, will be the guest speaker today from Ghana. We expect him to talk primarily on the role of the Pan-African Parliament as he sees it. But secondly, the other issue that he is going to talk about, it will be the issue of the impact of COVID-19 on the continent. You are aware that last year it was very, very difficult for either the Pan-African Parliament or the AU to convene a contact type of meeting. It has been virtual meetings and hybrid, but unfortunately you can't really discuss much when you have virtual meetings, because you really have to ensure that your time is congested, but also you don't have technical issues, and we often see those technical challenges when they are using the technology to convene these kind of big assembly. We expect the Minister of International Relations of South Africa, Dr. Naledi Pandor, to also speak here. I think the focus also will be around how do you build better. As you know that the United Nations has adopted the theme, build better. In other words, to rebuild the economy, you have to build it better. How do you build it better? You bring in ordinary people, poorer nations in particular, at the center, because if the developed countries, the industrialized countries, for example, your G7, your G20, are inward-looking, it will not assist the world. And therefore, the Pan-African Parliament will also have to grapple with the issue of how do you rebuild the economy. But there has been criticism leveled at the Pan-African Parliament that it doesn't have teeth. Indeed, it doesn't have teeth, because we saw during the pandemic when countries gazetted regulations to manage and also to ensure that you deal with the challenges of COVID-19. Some other countries abused those regulations. They were turned into some sort of a means to suppress the will and the views of the people. We saw many people in different countries complaining about how difficult it was for them to survive, particularly the security establishments and the security cluster in different countries. When they introduced those measures, they did violate the human rights of ordinary citizens on the continent. So the question is, this time around, are we likely to see the Pan-African Parliament weighing in such issues? Fortunately, you also have members from political parties, the opposition parties on the continent. And I have no doubt that it is going to be a heated one. We saw the last one where the leader of the EFF in South Africa was very, very vocal on issues of budget and issues of corruption, because there was allegations of corruption leveled against the former president of the Pan-African Parliament. We saw Namibia, the opposition in Namibia, being very, very vocal, also supporting the opposition in South Africa in a unified voice to ensure that there's accountability. Now, we are hoping that we'll speak to the ANC Chief Whip Nepemi Jodina, who is a member of Parliament, who is also a member of the Pan-African Parliament, about the position of the caucus of South Africa in particular. What are the issues that they would like the Pan-African Parliament to focus on? Yes, the ANC, the biggest liberation organization of the continent, on the continent that is going through difficult times. We will also perhaps ask her also, how do you call yourself a leader of the society and a leader perhaps of the continent when there are so many challenges within the ruling party in South Africa, where we have the Pan-African Parliament?
Of course, at a conversation, at a gathering such as this one, Sophie, the issue of Kiswahili being used as a continental language once up comes again. Do we know if this is on the agenda?
Yes, the groups or the subcommittee that deals with arts and culture is going to present this proposal. We are hoping that we will be able to speak to members of Pan-African Parliament from different countries to hear their views. Because when you talk about arts and culture to unite, to rebuild, but also to develop the continent, you cannot leave out communications. And to communicate, there should be a way in which you communicate as the continent. Yes, you can use English, you can use French, but these are actually foreign language. What are we going to do to affirm ourselves as Africans? And therefore, it is important perhaps for the Pan-African Parliament, as they focus on issues of arts and culture, to look at the possibility of adopting one of the African languages to be the official language. And clearly, Kiswahili is one language that can be used because you have quite a number of countries on the continent that are able to communicate in Kiswahili, but also in South Africa. When you listen to Kiswahili, there are words that are familiar with Sesotho, there are words that are familiar with isiZulu, and therefore you can follow here and there, and it will be much easier for even institutions of higher learning, the researchers, those who are responsible for language, to ensure that they start thinking about this. But also at school level, also the Department of Education must come up with a program of action to try and get perhaps a clear program of action to bring in this kind of an initiative. And I think the language teachers at school level, starting from primary level to secondary level, I think they can be able to do this, particularly with movement of people, goods and services. We know that we have many Africans from those countries that are using Kiswahili as an official language, and they can be available to share their skills, to train our educationists and those who are dealing with issues of education to perhaps look at Kiswahili as an official language on the continent.
Sophie, are you able to update us on a matter that we've been reporting on extensively, the nominations in the 5 regions of a potential president of the Pan-African Parliament?
Yes, there are 3 candidates, one from Zimbabwe, one representing the SADC region. You also have one from Mali, and you have the last one perhaps from South Sudan. We spoke to him earlier on Morning Live. And therefore, clearly, again, the issue of regional factions, let me put it bluntly, are going to play itself here, because regions must work together to be able to put a candidate who will be able to amass support. But I can tell you, Desiree, all the time when there is elections here at the Pan-African Parliament for any position, there is contestation. And you know that much as we talk about one continent, one Africa, united, speaking in one voice, sometimes it doesn't translate to that, particularly even at the political level, not only in terms of the citizens, where we see xenophobia rearing its ugly head in different areas, sometimes being divided by issues of resources, sometimes divided by issue of language, culture. You are going to see that happening. It is going to be a robust process to come up with a final person who will take over the reins and become the president of the Pan-African Parliament. For SADC, it always gets very difficult because we don't have numbers. But I think North, South, and Central may pull their heads together and come up with a candidate that can win this one. But we don't know. Maybe this time around, Southern Africa will be fortunate, because the argument here, Desiree, has been that you have the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa in the SADC region, and therefore the other regions are saying that perhaps the president of the Pan-African Parliament must be a person from those regions. But SADC has been saying you cannot exclude SADC. It's like having an African Union in Addis, and then you say Ethiopia cannot chair the African Union. Therefore, it becomes a problem, and we'll see. But I can tell you, it is going to be a robust one woman, two men. Yes, the issue of gender all the time. And we don't know what's likely to happen, but I can tell you it is going to be difficult to arrive at the final decision in terms of votes, who will be the president of the Pan-African Parliament.
Of course, this gathering coincides with Africa Day tomorrow. Are there any plans in this regard?
Yes, indeed, it is part of the agenda tomorrow. The Pan-African Parliament will celebrate Africa Day. What a history when we celebrate the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa. We have as our guest the President of Ghana, President Akufo-Addo. You know that Kwame Nkrumah, the former president of Ghana, among others, were part of leadership that came up with the idea of the Organization of African Unity, which is today called AU. You know that Haile Selassie, Mwalimu Nyerere from Tanzania, and the others, and including O.R. Tambo on the sideline, the former president of the ANC, were leaders who really pushed for the formation of the Organization of African Unity that today we call AU. And tomorrow we will be celebrating the launch of the Organization of African Unity. The aim then was to liberate the continent from apartheid and colonialism, and now the AU with more difficult task to liberate the continent from the economic oppression.
Sophie, do we know if President Akufo-Addo is meeting President Ramaphosa?
No information yet, but there is no way the president of a country can visit a particular country and there is no interaction, whether informal or some sort of short working visit. I think an announcement will be made before end of the day, but he is here for Pan-African Parliament. But definitely, you know, in terms of the formalities and the protocol, you have to go and meet the head of state of that particular country that is hosting you. It is a norm, and I think that is going to happen. But also remember, President Ramaphosa will be hosting his counterpart from France on Thursday, President Emmanuel Macron. So on international front, this week, quite a lot of work for us.
Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed. The Pan-African Parliament in session at the moment, and I imagine we will be speaking to foreign editor Sophie Mokoena quite regularly on this one.